Cast your minds back to the middle of February with the release of Tomb Raider 1 through 3 Remastered, the classic PlayStation era games finally getting a new coat of paint and modernizing in the best possible way some of the more dated mechanics from the games, and from the people who played the remasters. Aspyr looks like, they put in a little bit more effort with this series as opposed to what they did with Star Wars Battlefront a couple of weeks later, but don't worry about any of that. It was met with, the Tomb Raider ones, they were met with a general applause. The people who played them really enjoyed what they played, but wasn't without its own round of controversy, of course, because even though Lara Croft, as appointed by BAFTA, is the most iconic video game character ever, so silly, but Crystal Dynamics, the license holder for Tomb Raider right now, had to go ahead and interject its own politics by adding a racial and ethnic content warning that thankfully only appeared once, but did end up making a lot of people roll their eyes.
This game and in the games of this collection contain offensive depictions of people and culture rooted in racial and ethnic prejudices. These stereotypes are deeply harmful, inexcusable, and do not align with our values at Crystal Dynamics. Rather than removing this content, we have chosen to present it here in its original form, unaltered, in the hopes that we may acknowledge its harmful impact and learn for it.
Press X to never see this disclaimer again. But it's so funny, man. They didn't want to alter, they wanted to present the originals. The entire reason that you guys purchased the rights to the franchise to begin with, the reason Lara Croft is, in video game circles, a household name. For a brief point in the 2000s, entertainment phenomenon. You didn't want to censor anything in regards to ethnic or racial prejudices, then why would you, a couple of months later, knowing the reverence that Lara Croft has as a character, why would you go ahead and censor her more appreciable aspects months after the fact? Why would you do this? Why would you do this? It makes me wonder. Okay, because you were more than willing. You knew exactly what was in there to begin with. This is, yes, in Tomb Raider 3, The Lost Artefact. They have a couple of Easter eggs where you have Lara Croft in her own armory, has pictures of herself, which isn't weird at all. But you release a patch to get rid of those. Very strange. Tomb Raiders 1 through 3 Remastered hit with a post-release censorship. His new update removes Lara Croft pinups from Tomb Raider 3 The Lost Artefact. In the latest instance of video game developers censoring a release post-launch, a recent update to Aspyr and Crystal Dynamics' recent Tomb Raiders 1 through 3 Remastered had removed a pair of risque pinups featuring series protagonist Lara Croft from the third game's expansion pack, Tomb Raider 3 The Lost Artefact. Well, yeah, of course, because they were so harmful to have up there in a locker room. Oh my god, jeez. The two pinups in questions, both of which are based on the promotional renders made from Tomb Raider 3 proper, can be found hung above Lara's scuba gear locker at the start of the game's 4th level, sleeping with the fishes. Oh, wouldn't you want to censor the name of that chapter, given the fact that it would unnecessarily paint Italian Americans in a negative light? In the first, the buxom heroine can be seen wearing her default outfit and laying against a red velvet background. Yes, of course. You can see it there. You can see it a little closer up in the top picture right there. And then, yes, the other one, oh my god, where she's in kind of, stereotypical Playboy-like spread. In pinup depicts a fully nude. They're polygons. It's a digital rendering. Wrapped seductively in a bedsheet, her body illuminated only by a pair of candles. Oh my god. Yeah, that was definitely saucy material back when these games were originally released in the 90s. The initial release of, the Remastered Collection. These pinups could be found on full display in both Artifact's original and remastered graphic settings. Their appearance in the former, admittedly hard to make out thanks to all the technical limitations at the time. I thought that would end up being how they censored them going forward, but however, as the first reported by a user on the Tomb Raider subreddit, following the release of the collections, the Title 2.0, did they do the thing oh my god, have now been completely removed from the remastered versions of Lost Artefact, adding insult to injury. Not only were the pinups subject to post-release censorship, but the update's patch notes failed as of writing and continued to fail to make any mention of their removal, thus effectively leaving players to be blindsided by the change. That's kind of that's kind of crazy that they removed stuff like that. Because I remember there was another patch that dropped in and around the same time that was getting an equal amount of stick. And that was about Final Fantasy VII Remake in anticipation of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. There it is. Got my mention in a video game. Yeah, oh no, they covered up Tifa. They put an undershirt underneath of her, not understanding that they're trying to make everything canonically make sense because Crisis Core came after the events of the original game, and she had an undershirt in that one, even though it was low resolution. And then they just recently did the Crisis Core reunion release in 2022, I think that one came out. And Tifa wearing that costume, and then also, you know, the game including the Nibelheim incident, Tifa being in that costume as opposed to when they released the remake in 2020, and she didn't have the black undershirt that covered up her 16-year-old cleavage, you bunch of perverts. That was the, oh no, that was the big thing. That was the big thing. Not also realizing that, oh yeah, that patch also clarified some other continuity errors, or at least trying to clean up the final line of the game, removing Aerith's very subtle line of I miss the steel sky, and then just going more overt with the meaning of that line, I don't like the sky, which ends up playing into a lot of Rebirth's ending, which I don't know if you guys want this or not, but I've been thinking about doing like a breakdown of the ending and doing some theory crafting for Rebirth going into Reclaim. I think that's what the third one's going to be called. I got pretty good logic behind that, but I might do that in a video coming up in the next couple of weeks or so, because the game is really weighing on my mind and I think about it a lot. And weighing's the wrong term. It's just consumed my life since the release, and seeing so many interesting takes on it, and the fact that it might end up being not just the greatest game of this year, but it's in close contention. It might end up being my second favorite game of all time. And the more that I think about it, and the more time that I put between it, it might end up, but I don't want to get ahead of myself on that one. But no, that patch was getting derided. Oh, it's just all about getting rid of that stuff. But what about the patch of this Tomb Raider release? Yeah, no, it's bad. They took down your pictures. I understand, you know, you shouldn't be censoring any of that crap, especially when you make the statement that no, everything else is going to be presented without being altered, and then you go in months after the fact for no real reason at all. Like there's no reason. There's reason for the remake ones, the remake alterations, because they're trying to tell a coherent story and they're focusing on every single aspect because they see the community focusing in on every single aspect, and if something is out of line, then they're going to point to that in theory craft. But that's another topic for another time. It's just not all patches and not all companies are made the same way. It's kind of what I'm trying to get at when it comes to this. Yes, and then, of course, there was another censoring situation that also played out with series antagonist Pierre Dupont sports a bomber jacket, yes, with a pin-up style graphic emblazoned on the back with an LL, yes, the Lady Luck abbreviation, completely nude pin-up girl that ended up getting a red bra or something like that, mostly because if you would have had, you know, even pixelated boobies, that would have probably put the game to a mature rating. So that I can kind of understand if you have better resolution on that, and if you go with the old model on that, yeah, you can kind of just not be able to make it out, and maybe that would have ended up passing the censors, and yeah, you wouldn't have been so regulated, so yeah, that would have ended up being a knock against its ability to be distributed, impacting its sales. I could see that change being a little bit more palatable, and especially if they would have Aspyr and Crystal Dynamics explained it that way, that might have been able to pass. But getting rid of a couple of pictures in an obscure spot in a game months after release, when sales for the game is just going to trickle in long after, good word of mouth might have bolstered it to begin with. Yeah, these are the types of shady business practices that if you do not spotlight, if you do not raise a fuss about, will continue to happen. I'm not out here to try to simp that we need, you know, or digital recreations of fictional women. That is absolutely not the case. But this revisionist history stuff, even as tiny of an example as this, is pernicious and is an overall bad move for the industry that is already in a bad spot to begin with. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.